Hello and welcome to the 160th of a second photography podcast. In this episode today, I'm going to be talking about the best vlogging camera. Now, I'm going to preface this with there's no perfect camera. No perfect camera exists. Maybe you want a lightweight camera. Well, a lightweight, small portable camera will have certain disadvantages, like you might not be able to get a shallow depth of field, you might not be able to change the lenses, etc, etc, etc. But we have a new camera out called the Sony ZV-1, and it's really designed as a vlogging camera. Most cameras have been designed as photography cameras with video a second. Some, like the GH5 and the GH series, are more video centric, but this really is a camera specifically aimed at vloggers. So Canon started this off, and Canon was the king. The 80D has been used in lots and lots of vlogging videos. It's very heavy. It has a flip screen, but it doesn't have stabilization. There's a few other things it doesn't have. Sony RX100 series of cameras are very good, and the Sony RX100 Mark VII had a mic input and was going the way of this ZV-1. However, the ZV-1 is much cheaper, and to be honest, it's lighter, it's cheaper compared to the RX100 most recent model, and probably it's good enough for most photographers, and it's probably good enough for most vloggers. So we're going to talk about the best vlogging camera today. I'm going to just do things a bit differently today. Rather than tire myself out and drone on reading out specs, I'm going to automate that process. So here are the specs for the Sony ZV-1.
The ZV-1 is a 20 megapixel camera with an f1.8 to f2.8 24 to 70mm lens. It can shoot both RAW and JPEG. The mechanical shutter speeds range from 30 seconds to 1/2000th of a second. Electronic shutter speed goes down to 1/32,000th of a second. Video recording is up to a 4K 30p at 100 megabits per second. It can shoot 24 frames per second continuous shooting. Video recording formats are MP4, AVC-HD and XAVCS. It has 315 focusing points. There is a flip-out screen but no EVF. It has a built-in microphone along with an external audio mic socket.
Now, the Sony ZV-1 is a good vlogging camera from what I can see. It's a lot cheaper than the RX100 equivalent. It has some things that the RX100s don't, like it's got built-in ND filters, it has a very good built-in microphone, and it has product-centered focusing, so it will focus on your face, and the modern Sony cameras do. They have eye tracking and they focus very well on your face. But if you lift up a product, it focuses on that. There are ways around that. So if you don't have a camera that has product focusing, you would have to hold up the product in front of your face so that the focus switches. Otherwise, it will stay locked on your face. So that's really good for sort of vlogging and product things and general YouTube videos. It's going to give a good image in 4K. It has metering for the face. So if you're outside, rather than getting an overall metering in video, it will meter for your face. So it probably means if you are standing in shadow, it's going to overexpose background to compensate for your face, or by compensating for your face, the background will overexpose. I don't know how good that is for some people. You could fix it in post by maybe underexposing, third of a stop, 2/3 of a stop, and then raising the shadows in post, and then you would preserve a bit of your background. But it's a very good feature, and this camera does a lot of things in an automated way. So you can press a button and it will defocus the background. In reality, it's switching the aperture down to 1.8 and it's adjusting the shutter speed to keep the exposure. But for most people, it's going to be really good and it's going to be automated. Now, speaking of automation, I've always thought the best vlogging camera is a camcorder, because vlogging is video. So why not get something that is just designed for video? For years and years now, camcorders have had flip out screens. So you can hold it and see yourself. They have better focusing than DSLRs for video. They have a larger depth of field, so everything's in focus. It makes focusing easier. If you're after a shallow depth of field, you're not going to get it with a camcorder very easily. It is possible. If you stand really far back and zoom in, you won't get the same quality as you get on a DSLR. Saying that though, on the ZV-1 you won't get a huge shallow depth of field because it's a small sensor camera. Camcorders also are very easy to hold. They're designed for video. They're designed to be held in your hand. They don't stop after 5 minutes. They handle heat well. They've generally got better microphones. They've always got headphone sockets and mic sockets, unless you buy the very, very cheapest one. But even if you buy the very, very cheapest one, you can spend £200 on a brand new camcorder and it would be better for vlogging than anything else you could buy for £200. So I have the Sony AX53. that shoots in 4K. It has, I think, probably the same sensor and the same outputs as the ZV-1. Interestingly, the ZV-1 and the AX53 are probably a similar price. However, I'm going to talk about the specs for the AX53, or someone else is going to talk about the specs for the AX53 now.
Sony AX53 specs. 1/2.5-inch back illuminated XMR CMOS sensor. Bions X image processor. Aperture of lens is f2.0 to 3.8. 20 times optical zoom. 30 times optical zoom in HD. 100% field of view EVF. Flip touchscreen. Boss image stabilization. Records up to 4K 30p 100 megabits per second. Video recording formats are MP4, AVC HD and XAVCS. Built-in zoom microphone. Dolby Digital 5.1 channel recording. Face detect focusing.
The AX53 is going to have more zoom capability. The battery's going to last longer because it has those massive batteries that you clip on the back. The microphone is going to pick up and process Dolby surround sound, but does anyone care about that? I don't think they do. Both have an inbuilt screen protector or lens hood, and both have a flip screen. So it's going to come down to price and what you prefer. Now, if you are going to do a little bit of photography, the ZV-1 is better. It shoots in RAW, as we heard in the specs. It is a good camera for photography, even though it's not being marketed that way. So if it's just videography, I'd always say get a camcorder. Now, I bought my camcorder secondhand. In fact, every camcorder I've had two, I bought secondhand. And for the price, I've got an amazing deal. I think I paid £300 for the AX53, and I can shoot 4K, 100 megabits per second. I can have incredible image stabilization. I can walk with it, and I can have zoom. I've got infrared. I've got all these features that make it really good for making YouTube videos and vlogging. Now, the last camera we're going to look at is something called an IdolCam, and no one's really heard of this, but it's been designed as a vlogging camera, just to vlog. And again, we're going to hear the specs now.
IdolCam. The IdolCam contains a 1/2.3-inch Sony sensor with 4K 30p video at 100 megabits per second. Photos are taken at a resolution of 12 megapixels. The sensor and lens are mounted on a 3-axis gimbal. The lenses can be changed and are held in place magnetically. The screen is a 180-degree touch screen. It has an inbuilt microphone and an external audio mic socket. A ring light can be attached to the lenses.
So the IdolCam is the cheapest of them all. I think it's maybe $450, whereas the other ones are around $700-800. It does 4K 30, 100 megabits per second like the other two, but it's got a 3-axis gimbal built in. You can change the lenses, you can put a ring light on. It's got a mic input, and it looks very good. But it's not made by a reputable camera manufacturer. It's not a Sony, it's not a Canon, it's not a Nikon, it's not a Panasonic. It's just some small company from the Far East. Would anyone get it? I don't know. What I've seen of it, it looks very good. So it comes down to considering these cameras, considering vlogging. There's no such thing as a perfect vlogging camera. And I've talked about today the Sony ZV-1. And yes, it is good, but I pointed out two alternatives that probably you hadn't thought of. So if you were going to get a vlogging camera, price would be your number one factor. You'd have so much money to spend, you would buy the best camera for vlogging that you could get within that category. Now, you could probably get a vlogging camera for under £100. And the simple way to do that is to use your phone, buy a gimbal for your phone, and phone gimbals are very cheap now, and buy a lavalier microphone or wireless microphone and plug it into your phone. You can use the front-facing camera if it's good enough, and then you can see yourself in the frame. You can get Filmic Pro for $10 or whatever it is, and for under £100 or $100, you'd have a vlogging setup that was good. There are other things you need to consider with a phone. You probably need some ND filters, otherwise your image is going to be hugely overexposed unless you have a ridiculously fast shutter speed. But it is possible to very cheaply kit your phone out as a vlogging camera. And in some cases, it might be the best because it's lightweight, it's always on you, the quality's good, and you can edit on it. And if you have a lavalier microphone or a wireless microphone or a shotgun microphone, then you'll get good sound and you won't have any handling noise. So Sony have addressed the issue of trying to do the perfect vlogging camera. It won't be the perfect vlogging camera because no such thing exists. It will be fairly close to it, but all I'm saying in this episode is it's not the only option. There are other options. There are budget options. There are camcorder options. There are options from companies you've probably never heard of. But do let me know what you think. I'd love to hear, and keep safe in the lockdown. Thank you. Goodbye.